Good morning. It's February 22nd. This is To My Liberal Friends. I want to talk about a subject today. It's a little inside baseball, but as most of you have listened to me know that I spent my life working in government relations in Washington, D.C., and that's a nice euphemism for being a lobbyist. I was a lobbyist. Well, there's been a sort of an undercurrent going on Capitol Hill that many, particularly Republican offices, are taking a look at the client lists of many of these large lobbying firms, and particularly how many Chinese companies they're representing, and those affiliated with the Chinese military. So Akin Gump, which is one of the largest law firms in the lobbying business, announced that they had dropped the Chinese company Hesai Group. And they began in August and were getting about $50,000 a month from them. They also parted ways with the Chinese electronics firm Xiaomi. That client's paid them over $1.2 million in the past 2 years. And it hasn't really stopped there. Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber Schreck, another large firm, terminated their relationship with Hesai, and again, they were getting about $50,000 a month. The Vogel Group has also dropped the Chinese drone company DJI, for which they've lobbied since 2022, and Complete Genomics, which it signed last fall. The firm reported pulling in $865,000 in lobbying revenues from DJI over their relationship, and $450,000 from Complete Genomics. And Evoke, which was formerly another company, and CLS Strategies, which also lobbied for DJI, but they had no comment on whether they're keeping DJI as a client, nor did Steptoe, which now lobbies for BGI. Brownstein Schreiber decided to decline to comment on their terminations, but they did list them that they were no longer representing them. They just don't want to comment on the termination. So what's caused this move by these firms to give up this pretty hefty revenue? Apparently, a list of firms representing Chinese clients has been circulating on Capitol Hill for several months. And many members of the Congress are considering closing their offices entirely with these lobbying firms that represent companies linked to the Chinese military. Now, I will admit most of these are Republican offices, and they're getting highly critical of this. Now, nobody's going to talk about this public, but the undercurrent is that the impact would be on other clients that firms have who need access to those offices, who might end up banning the firms for their representation of certain clients. Now, this game's been going on in D.C. forever and ever. I can remember at a time where there were certain offices who would only meet with lobbyists who were on the same side politically. In other words, if they were Democrats, they only met with Democratic lobbyists. That was particularly strong among Democrats. I used to always advocate that since I was a Republican, maybe some of the Republicans ought to quit meeting with Democrats. The other thing that goes on is if you don't attend the fundraiser for a member, it might be harder to get a meeting. And this is just the nature of the game in Washington, how it's played. But it's interesting that they're now targeting these Chinese groups. Chinese companies spend millions and millions and millions of dollars every year trying to influence votes in Congress. And I think a lot of these members of Congress and their staff are now looking at that and say, hey, it's not in the interest of the United States to allow these companies to have this kind of influence. And so we're going to make it plain to companies, if you want to represent them, fine, but you're not going to come into our office. And of course, that's what leads them to be dropping these clients, because they're only a small part of their business. And it doesn't look, if you're representing, say, General Motors, and you suddenly can't get into an office, how long is General Motors going to stay with you? American clients are going to be dropping away. And so I think it's kind of an interesting situation. I'll have to stay tuned to see how it plays out. But in the end, I think there's some real reasons why you would not want to represent Chinese companies. I know when I was in the business, there were certain companies I would not represent. I don't smoke. I think tobacco is an insidious product, and so I would never represent any tobacco companies. That was just my choice. And so now these companies are going to have to make a choice on whether they like the money these Chinese companies are paying them, and do they want to keep representing them, or are they going to have to look at their other clients and say, well, I have to make a choice. I'm going to choose my other clients over these Chinese companies. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.